In a small town by the edge of a quiet forest, there lived a golden retriever named Buddy. His coat shone like the sun, and his eyes sparkled with kindness. Buddy belonged to a gentle man named Mr. Thompson, who had always treated him like family. They shared morning walks, afternoon naps, and evenings filled with laughter. But one fateful day, everything changed. That morning, the air was crisp and clear. Buddy felt a strange twinge of excitement as Mr. Thompson reached for his leash. It was one of those days when the sun poured down, making the grass gleam bright green. They headed towards the park, where the scent of fresh-cut grass mingled with laughter from children playing. But soon a shadow swooped over their joy. As they walked, they encountered a woman named Linda. She had a small, feisty dog named Max, who was known for his snappy temperament. Buddy had always been friendly, wagging his tail at every passerby, but Max wasn't having it. As soon as he spotted Buddy, he barked fiercely, pulling at Linda's leash. "Stay back," Linda shouted, her voice sharp like broken glass. Buddy froze for a moment, confused but not afraid. Mr. Thompson moved closer, ready to reassure Buddy. "It's okay, boy," he whispered softly, giving him a gentle pat. But then, without warning, Max lunged forward. Buddy instinctively stepped back, but it happened in an instant. The little dog leapt towards Buddy, snapping at his ears. The panic washed over Buddy, his heart racing, and he let out a whimper, not out of anger, but out of fear. Linda, seeing the commotion, tugged harder at Max's leash, trying to tug him away. "I'm sorry," she yelled, her face red with embarrassment, but her words were drowned by Max's furious barks. In that moment, an unexpected tension filled the air. The other dog owners around them paused, unsure of what to do. Some turned away, pretending they hadn't seen anything. But a few stepped closer, curiosity gripping them. They watched closely, like they were hanging on the edge of a cliff. Buddy looked up at Mr. Thompson, his big brown eyes searching for comfort. Mr. Thompson, feeling the weight of the situation, rested a calming hand on Buddy's back. It was clear they were both feeling the same mix of fear and confusion. Max continued to bark and Linda continued to apologize, but the tension only grew. "Calm down, Buddy," Mr. Thompson spoke softly, as if his words could shield Buddy from the chaos around them. Then, in a moment that would alter everything, Max broke free from Linda's grasp. He dashed towards Buddy, and everything happened so fast. Mr. Thompson stepped in front of Buddy instinctively, his protector role kicking in. He shouted. Buddy's heart raced faster. He wasn't sure what to do. He wasn't trained for this sort of encounter. All he knew was that he wanted to run and hide, but Mr. Thompson stood firm. In that split second, a sense of bravery overcame Buddy's fear. Maybe it was the comfort of knowing Mr. Thompson was there, or maybe it was just the instinct to stand his ground. As Max approached, barking aggressively, Buddy responded not with a growl, but with a low whine. He wanted to show the little dog he meant no harm. He just wanted to play. But Max wasn't interested in playing. He only saw a threat. "Stop it, sit," Linda screamed, frantic now, her hands shaking as she tried to regain control of her little dog. But Max didn't sit, he lunged again. In that moment, something inside Buddy clicked. He knew he had to defend himself, not with anger, but with courage. He let out a firm bark, a sound deep and resonating, much like Mr. Thompson's voice when he was trying to ward off trouble. It surprised even Buddy. Max halted, stunned. Buddy seized the moment, stepping forward, tail raised high, signaling peace. The onlookers held their breath as if they were witnessing a duel between two warriors. Buddy's calmness radiated through the confusion like a lighthouse in a storm. Finally, in a bid for resolution, Mr. Thompson leaned down, speaking gently to Buddy. "It's okay, Buddy, I'm here," he assured him. Then he turned to Linda. His request was calm yet firm. Linda finally managed to get a hold of Max, tugging him away with all her might. She watched wide-eyed as Buddy settled back down at Mr. Thompson's side. The crowd around them began to disperse, murmurs and whispers trailing behind them like smoke. "I'm so sorry," Linda said, her face softening with regret. Buddy's heart began to settle, but the tension lingered in the air. "Mr. Thompson gave her a nod. "It's all right." As they moved away from the chaos, Buddy felt a sense of weight lift from his shoulders. Mr. Thompson petted his fur, and the warmth of his hands soothed the lingering anxieties. It felt good to be loved, to be protected. It was then that Buddy realized not every interaction needed to end in anger or fear. Sometimes, just sometimes, understanding could take its place. Still, Linda couldn't shake her guilt. That incident nagged at her as they walked away. Later that night, she couldn't sleep, the incident playing over in her mind like a broken record. Finally, she made a decision. She would confront this not just for herself, but for Buddy too. The next day, she found Mr. Thompson and Buddy at the park. Her heart raced as she approached them, holding her breath. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaky. Mr. Thompson looked up, surprised but curious. "I just wanted to say how sorry I am for what happened yesterday." She glanced down at Buddy, squirming slightly beneath Mr. Thompson's gentle grip. He didn't deserve that. Buddy looked at her, his head tilted, sensing her sincerity. The golden retriever was a quick learner, and he had come to understand that people were sometimes afraid, but that didn't mean they meant harm. "It's all right," Mr. Thompson replied, his voice steady. "We can only do our best." Linda nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I promise I will." Mr. Thompson softened. "It's easy to lose control sometimes. What's important is that you recognize it." Buddy sensed a shift in the atmosphere. It was no longer uncertain and heavy, but instead light and warm. He smiled up at Linda, his tail wagging gently. "To show my appreciation, I'd like to offer you an apology from Buddy too," Mr. Thompson said, laughing lightly. Linda smiled, wiping her eyes. She looked down at Buddy, then back at Mr. Thompson. "Thank you both." With a newfound sense of harmony, the two dogs began to sniff each other, as if to solidify their truce. Max, surprisingly timid now, cautiously approached Buddy. As the two dogs started to circle each other, Buddy was careful, reminding himself of the earlier incident, but he was more interested in friendship than fear. He bowed low, a sign of respect, and Max, seeing this gentle approach, mirrored his actions. 80% of communication is nonverbal. Body language, tone, and gestures often say more than words ever could. In this moment, both dogs shared a silent understanding, blossoming into a bond that would grow with time. In the following weeks, Buddy and Max began to play together regularly. As they frolicked in the park, the tension from that fateful day melted away. Linda and Mr. Thompson often sat together on the benches, sharing stories about their dogs and life in the small town. Buddy discovered that every bark, every wag of a tail, and every sniff carried a message. Fear could transform into friendship if only given the chance, and the two men found their friendship blossoming as well. They would often joke about the incident, playfully teasing each other about their dogs. As the bond between Buddy and Max grew, so did the camaraderie between Linda and Mr. Thompson. Their friendship reminded everyone in the park that it's okay to be afraid, it's okay to misunderstand. What truly matters is the courage to confront those fears with kindness. At the heart of every apology, there is a deeper understanding waiting to be discovered. And with every bark that echoed through the park, a new lesson emerged. Sometimes, even in turmoil, forgiveness waits quietly, ready to step in when we least expect it. With time, patience, and the willingness to understand one another, we can turn fears into friendships, leaving the past behind and embracing a brighter future. In the heart of a vibrant city, under the soft glow of streetlights, stood a small dog named Max. He was a scruffy little terrier, not much bigger than a loaf of bread. To most, he was just another face in the crowd, but in that moment he was about to become the center of an unexpected storm. Max's owner, a frail, anxious woman named Clara, was on her way home from a long shift at the diner. She was tired but filled with love for her little companion. As they walked, Max trotted cautiously, ever aware of the bustling world around him. He loved the energy of the city, but it also made him nervous. Every honk of a horn, every shout, and even the laughter of children could set his heart racing. As they turned a corner, they found themselves in front of a busy cafe. The scent of coffee wafted through the air, drawing Clara's tired eyes towards the warmth inside. Just then, Max caught sight of an approaching dog, a large, muscular German shepherd named Duke. Duke exuded confidence, with a sleek coat and an imposing stature. His owner, a tall man with an easy smile, seemed to walk in sync with his fierce companion. Instinctively, Max stepped back, his little body trembling. He had encountered dogs like Duke before, strong, dominating. In that moment, fear took hold of Max, pulling him back from the street, but Clara was just too tired to notice the telltale signs of her dog's anxiety. "Come on, Max," Clara said lightly, unaware of the turmoil brewing inside him. But to Max, it wasn't just a dog. It was a looming shadow, a reminder of the times he had been intimidated and overwhelmed. He wanted to turn and hide, but his feet remained rooted to the pavement. As Duke approached, his owner casually reached down to pat him. "Easy, boy," he said, but Clara's naivety in the moment preceded the tension. Duke, getting closer, barked sharply, a sound that echoed like a thunderclap in Max's ears. Max didn't know what to do. Should he stand his ground or run? A million thoughts raced through his mind, but before he could decide, a small yelp escaped his throat, almost a whimper. It was the kind of sound that betrayed his fear. Duke paused, his ears perked up, the intensity of his gaze seizing Max. He lunged, thinking it was a game, a challenge. With a flash, the two dogs stood nose to nose, the big, menacing Duke and the trembling Max. Time seemed to freeze. Clara watched in horror, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized what was happening. "Max," she shouted, moving to pull her little dog away, but it was too late. Duke had already made his move. In a sudden burst, Duke jumped forward, barking fiercely. Max instinctively bolted. He darted around Clara's legs, desperate to escape. The chaos unfolded in a split second, and before anyone could react, a terrible collision followed, a yelp and a scramble of paws as Duke stumbled back, surprised by Max's sudden burst of speed. "Whoa," Duke's owner exclaimed, trying to regain control. He pulled at Duke's leash, which only fueled the towering dog's excitement. In the smaller dog's mind, this was not a friendly game. This was an overwhelming flood of anxiety. Every instinct in Max screamed to run, to hide, but he was caught in a whirlwind of fear. Clara yelled, her voice a mixture of anger and panic. Even as she pleaded, it felt like a chasm loomed between them, uncomfortably wide, challenging her to bridge the gap of fear that had built up in Max's heart. It struck her suddenly, the helplessness. She was supposed to protect him, yet here they were, standing in a storm of confusion and barking. In the commotion, something unexpected happened. Max, finding an opening, dashed away from Clara and took off towards the park, the only safe haven he could think of. The world around him spun, a blur of people and sounds, but all he could focus on was the soft grass beneath his paws. Duke, now more excited than ever, leapt after him, fueled by instinct. The chase was on. Clara's panic transformed into alarm as she watched the two dogs race through the park, dodging trees and children playing. Her heart raced, not knowing what would happen next. Real life often reflects our darkest fears. The instincts we all carry deep within us can manifest in moments like these. Animals, much like humans, react based on their histories. Max had been rescued once. Life had already taught him the weight of fear. As Max fled, he could hear Duke's heavy footsteps behind him, but he didn't look back. All he wanted was to escape the looming shadow. He sprinted through the park and into a nearby alley where the noise and chaos of the city seemed to fade. But just as he thought he found safety, he stumbled upon a dead end. Max pressed his back against the cold wall, panting and trembling. Duke was relentless. Max could hear him bounding closer, his paws pounding against the pavement. The little dog curled himself into a ball, hoping to make himself invisible. Inside, fear clawed at him. He remembered the times he had been bullied, his small stature working against him. But in that darkness, beneath the dread, something else began to emerge: strength. He realized that sometimes the biggest battles are fought within ourselves. He thought about Clara, the love she had always shown him. Perhaps she was still looking for him, hoping he was safe. Duke's heavy panting filled the alley as he rounded the corner, eyes locked on Max, but this time something shifted. Max didn't cower in fear as he had before. Just then, a figure appeared behind Duke. Clara burst into the alley, breathless and frantic. Max, her relief was palpable, cutting through the haze of fear that had settled in the air. Duke paused, confused by this sudden intrusion. He looked back at his owner, eyes glimmering with uncertainty, still caught between playfulness and aggression. Clara locked eyes with the big dog, her voice suddenly firm. "You need to calm down." Time slowed down as uncertainty hovered in the balance. Clara's warm gaze softened as she took a few cautious steps toward Duke. She knew that behind that imposing exterior was a creature simply reacting to the world as he saw it, just like Max. "Hey there, big guy," she cooed, kneeling down as she extended a gentle hand towards Duke. The tension in the air was thick, but her calm demeanor began to change the mood. She was showing kindness instead of anger, a powerful reminder of just how strong compassion could be. Duke hesitated, his body language shifting. He sensed her energy and perhaps for the first time realized that she posed no threat. He stepped closer, inching toward her extended hand, which dangled like a lifeline. "See. We can be friends," Clara whispered, gradually winning over the larger dog. In an unexpected twist, Duke lowered his head to sniff her palm, curiosity overcoming his boisterous nature. Behind Clara, Max watched, eyes wide and confused. He felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this wasn't just another battle after all. With his heart racing, he took a hesitant step forward, recognizing that maybe, just maybe, this moment could change everything. Clara beamed with pride, slowly allowing Max to join her. Duke reeled back, his posture shifting as he began to soften. In that divine moment of vulnerability, Clara turned to Max and smiled. "It's okay, buddy." Max cautiously approached, and without thinking, he did what dogs do best: he wagged his tail. Duke mirrored him, his rigid stance relaxing as the two dogs began to sniff each other neck to neck. A new understanding formed between them, as innocent as the sunlight filtering through the trees above. As Clara looked at Duke's owner, who had now stepped closer, she gently took a deep breath. Her voice was steady, a quiet strength emanating from her. "I'm sorry for the chaos." The tall man smiled back, visibly relieved. "No harm done. Duke just gets a little too excited sometimes." In that moment, something profound shifted in the air. This was more than just a chance encounter. It was about the willingness to be open, to confront fear, and to embrace understanding. The two dogs, once a fierce contrast, were now engaging in a dance of playfulness, allowing love to take center stage above their previous anxiety. But the most important lesson wasn't just for them. Clara and Duke's owner exchanged glances that spoke volumes, a tacit acknowledgement of their paths and the struggle that comes with misunderstanding. He suggested, his eyes sparkling with hope. Clara nodded, a smile breaking across her face. "I'd love that." As they exchanged numbers, Max and Duke rolled around in the grass, innocent energy bursting forth. They were no longer just strangers with an uncomfortable beginning. They transformed into friends, two brave souls navigating a world often defined by fear, but here, in this moment, suddenly filled with possibilities. Their tale of chase had morphed into a story of connection. In this bustling city, among the noise and distractions, they found something profound. The realization that understanding and compassion could emerge even from the most chaotic moments. Max didn't just find a friend in Duke, he discovered that courage sometimes lies in standing tall. And Clara learned that true love is understanding and forgiveness, waiting for the right moment to take form. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, the laughter of friendship rang out in the park. The city was still alive, a buzzing hive of activity, but within this corner, a bond forged in the crucible of chaos showed how powerful empathy could be. All it took was one brave moment, the willingness to dive into the unknown, and realizing that with a little patience, even the fiercest storms could lead to sunshine and warmth. Together, Max, Clara, Duke, and his owner stepped forward into the twilight, knowing that what had once seemed frightening could now blossom into a friendship filled with adventure and joy. In the early hours of a gray morning, Daniel sat at the edge of a bustling park, a timid little puppy by his side. The puppy, a golden retriever named Charlie, was still adjusting to the overwhelming sights and sounds of the world. They had just moved into the neighborhood, and Daniel's heart raced with hope. This was a fresh start, a new chapter, but today an unexpected encounter would shape their journey. As the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the vibrant green grass, Daniel watched as families gathered, children laughing, their joyous voices intertwining with the chirping of birds. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp morning air fill his lungs. He wanted to believe that this park could be a place of happiness for Charlie. Suddenly, a loud bark shattered the peaceful ambience. Daniel turned to see a tall figure striding confidently toward them, a dark, powerful German shepherd named Rex, his muscles rippling under his sleek coat. Behind him walked a woman, her posture sharp and her focus locked on Daniel and Charlie. She exclaimed, but her tone held a hint of impatience, as if she were merely passing judgment. Charlie, unsure of how to react, sank his head down, his big brown eyes wide and full of uncertainty. Rex, however, was more than happy to greet them. He lunged forward, barking loudly, his energy spilling over like a fierce wave. Daniel stiffened, the sudden commotion sending shockwaves of fear through his body. Charlie whimpered softly, a sound that spoke volumes about his trepidation. The woman shouted, her voice cutting sharply through the air, but the commanding tone only inflamed Rex's excitement. He raced toward Charlie, who, paralyzed by fear, stood frozen, unsure of what the big dog might do next. Time seemed to stretch as Daniel desperately sought to protect Charlie. He called out, holding his hand up to Rex, though he felt hardly in control. But before he could react, Rex jumped, barking with wild enthusiasm, his excitement creating an alarm. Charlie, sensing the impending threat, let out a frightened yelp. He darted behind Daniel's legs, eyes wide with fear, looking for solace in his owner's presence. In that moment, everything seemed heightened, the world around them blurred, and the noise grew deafening. The guardian instinct within Daniel ignited as he placed himself firmly in front of Charlie, creating a barrier. "Back off," he shouted, trying to calm the frenzy that was unraveling before him. But so was the panic rising within him. Rex halted for just a moment, surprised by Daniel's sudden bravado. The woman called out, her harsh tone laced with embarrassment. But it appeared futile. Rex was still charged with energy, ready to explode into action. Charlie cowered and trembled, taking a small step back. Canines, like humans, often respond to their surroundings. Charlie, having been sheltered in a loving home since his adoption, had never encountered such a threatening presence. Every instinct told him to retreat, to hide away from this giant who wore a fierce demeanor. Daniel pleaded, locking eyes with the woman. He's scared. Rex, sensing the tension, tugged at his leash with renewed vigor, the force pulling his owner awkwardly toward Charlie. The woman desperately tried to regain control, but her grip faltered, and Rex surged forward, wanting to play, wanting to engage. Despite the chaos, one thing became increasingly clear. Daniel's priority was Charlie. The world might see just a romp between dogs, but as he looked down at his frightened companion, he recognized something deeper. This was about trust. This was about understanding the fears that lurked just beneath the surface. Daniel shouted, "What's his deal anyway?" His voice struck a nerve, carving through the atmosphere of anxiety. Unexpectedly, the woman's defensiveness began to wane. She called back, a note of concern threading her voice. "He gets excited around other dogs." Daniel felt a shred of sympathy. This woman simply wanted to enjoy the park with her dog, just like he did. And yet her lack of control had created an uncomfortable situation that both of them were desperately trying to navigate. Rex gave a playful bark, looking back at his owner, and in that brief moment, vulnerability flickered in the woman's gaze. I should have trained him better, it's just." In the aftermath of her admission, the emphasis shifted. The tension still hung in the air, but underneath it, an understanding was starting to germinate. The fear that had seconds ago wrapped around Daniel began to loosen its grip. People often misunderstand a dog's behavior, projecting their own fears and anxieties onto the unsure creature as if they were reflections of themselves. With a mix of courage and compassion, Daniel stepped forward, bending down to meet Rex's eyes. "Easy, buddy," he murmured, his voice as gentle as the spring breeze. Charlie peeked out from behind him, curiosity replaced the fear, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere. It was then that Daniel took a deep breath, recognizing that the true power of the moment lay not in fear but in forgiveness. "I think they need to get to know each other. Give them a chance," he suggested gently, hoping to heal the tension between them all. The woman nodded hesitantly, wanting to trust her dog, wanting to trust this moment. "Okay, let's try that," she replied, her voice steadying. She took a step back, allowing Rex some space to breathe. As Rex took a tentative step forward, tail wagging slightly, something inside Charlie shifted. The little puppy, sensing his owner's calmness, gathered his courage. He stepped out from behind Daniel, a quiet determination igniting within him. With a brave step forward, the two dogs met, noses touched cautiously, just a hint of uncertainty lingering in the air. Daniel and the woman watched closely, heartbeats synchronized in anticipation. Would this be a catastrophe or a newfound friendship? Their willingness to embrace the uncertainty was palpable, a true testament to the beauty of connection. For a moment, silence enveloped them, and then, as if the universe itself had intervened, the ice began to melt. The dogs took a step back, assessing one another, but then Rex wagged his tail vigorously. Charlie mirrored him, his tail picking up speed, and soon both dogs were hopping around playfully, their fears dissolving into laughter, an innocent chaos of barks and wiggles. The woman exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with surprise. A warmth unfurled in her chest as she watched her fierce German shepherd drift into gentle play. Daniel said, his smile brightening his features. Both owners exchanged glances, seeing the spark of friendship kindling between their pets. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes all it takes is the courage to step away from our fears, to embrace the unknown. This small moment of vulnerability opened doors to understanding. They were no longer just two dog owners protecting their pets. They were two people navigating the unpredictable landscape of life together. For the next few minutes, laughter painted the air. The dogs tumbled around, their friendship blossoming like flowers in spring. It was magical to witness a joy born from uncertainty, forged in the fire of initial fear. Eventually, the dogs plopped down onto the grass, panting and happily exhausted. Daniel and the woman exchanged stories, sharing tales of their own dogs, their lives intertwined for just a moment. She told him about Rex's training and how the big dog often needed an outlet for his energy. He began to open up about Charlie, how this little guy had brought so much joy to his life after a rough year. "What you did back there, stepping in like that, it's brave," she said quietly, her gaze sincere. Daniel shrugged, the warmth of her acknowledgement settling gently within him. "It's about understanding, right? We're all a little scared sometimes." The words struck deep, echoing the truths they had both faced. Humans and dogs alike often grapple with fear, and it takes a voice, be it a bark or a gentle word, to cross the divide. As daylight began to stretch across the park, the laughter and bond between them felt like an unbreakable thread weaving their lives together for the briefest of moments. The understanding between dog and owner was a dance of trust and vulnerability that mirrored their own experiences. Eventually, the dogs calmed, content to rest as their owners continued to talk. With laughter bubbling from the depths of their hearts, Daniel suddenly asked, "So, how about we set up a doggy playdate?" A radiant smile broke across her face. "I'd love that." There was a newfound connection, a shared journey that lay ahead, and both Daniel and the woman knew it. Their lives would intertwine, together forging every step of this adventure, both relationships and friendships blossoming without fear or hesitation. As they exchanged numbers, they glanced down, their hearts swelling with hope at the sight of their dogs, two unlikely companions that had found forgiveness in the depths of fear. Perhaps this wasn't just about dogs. Perhaps their encounter was a powerful reminder that understanding, compassion, and connection are universal, each interaction woven into the complex fabric of life. They took a moment to breathe in the tranquility around them, knowing that while fear would always lurk, it could be transformed into something beautiful with a little kindness and courage. Every step forward unfolded like new leaves in spring, a promise of laughter and love that would echo long after they parted. As they finally waved goodbye, a new chapter began to unfold for Daniel and Charlie, a story of bravery, compassion, and the unexpected beauty of friendship. And so, beneath the soft hues of the evening sky, their laughter danced on the breeze, mingling with the world, painting life in the colors of connection, waiting to see what the next day would bring. A loud crash echoed through the narrow hallway, snapping everyone's attention to the old wooden door at the far end. At that moment, inside an apartment buzzing with laughter and chatter, a small dog named Max sat quietly, his ears perked up, tension radiating from his tiny, quivering body. He was a fluffy little terrier, usually bursting with energy, but today was different. An unexpected argument had prompted fear to settle deep within him. Max had been happily chewing on his favorite toy, a worn-out rubber bone, when his owner, a young woman named Sarah, received an urgent phone call. It was her boss, and the conversation quickly escalated into a heated exchange. Max tried to focus on his game, but loud voices crashed against the walls of their cozy apartment, shaking the very foundations of his trust in the calm life they usually shared. Sarah's voice shot through the air, sharp and worried. As the argument escalated, tension thickened in the room. Max, feeling the anxiety wrap around him like a heavy blanket, dropped his toy and slowly retreated into the corner. With every raised voice, his heart raced faster, mirroring the escalating emotions swirling around him. In moments of stress, dogs often pick up on their owner's feelings, sensing even the most subtle changes in tone. Max, knowing something was off, felt the familiar sting of apprehension crawling beneath his fur. "Look, I'll get it done," Sarah snapped, trying to regain control over the situation. Max's little paws shuffled quietly, instinctively knowing he should seek shelter. Would the storm pass? Would things return to normal? Just then, the door swung open with a loud bang, and in walked Jake, a tall man with an air of confidence that seemed to quiet even the most chaotic moments. He had been one of Sarah's closest friends since college. He often had a calming influence that made the world feel a little less chaotic. However, today was different. As he entered, red flags danced in the air. The uncomfortable tension was palpable. Max watched cautiously, staying hidden behind the couch, his heart pounding like a drum. Jake asked, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Sarah turned to Jake, her frustration spilling over. "I don't want to talk about it right now," she said sharply, biting back the tears that threatened to spill. With every word, Max felt the swell of unease rise within him. He loved Sarah, but he couldn't ignore the piquant surge of emotions swirling around him: fear, anger, and confusion. Okay, just breathe," Jake replied, his voice steady. But Max could still sense the unresolved energy in the air. It wrapped around him, a suffocating fog that seemed impossible to escape. It was at that moment, in a flash of instinct, that Max charged out from his hiding spot. He scuttled to Sarah's side, jumping up and gently nudging her hand with his nose, trying to bring her back to the light. He needed her to understand that everything would be okay. Sometimes pets are better at reading emotional cues than we realize, often becoming a bridge to comfort in times of distress. Sarah looked down, her eyes softening when she noticed Max's gentleness. "Hey there, buddy," she whispered, crouching down, and as if sensing her need, Max wagged his tail, the sheer innocence of his presence momentarily cutting through the heavy atmosphere. "See, even Max believes you can get through this," Jake said, his tone lightening as he met Max's playful gaze. At that moment, Sarah's frustration slowly morphed into a soft smile. The little dog's pure spirit seemed to remind her of the joy she had once found in her work and the friendships she had cultivated. She knelt down and ruffled Max's fur. "Thanks, little guy," she said, taking a breath. But just as things seemed to settle, the phone buzzed again and a screen flashed with new notifications. Frowning, Sarah picked it up, her expression darkening once more. She groaned, scrolling through a barrage of messages and emails from her boss. Jake glanced at Max, who was still nuzzling at Sarah's side, sensing another wave of anxiety crashing over them. The young man took a steady breath before speaking. "How about we give this situation a break? Let's take Max for a walk." Sarah hesitated. "But I have to finish this, just an hour," Jake urged, nodding toward Max's pleading eyes. "Let him remind you how to unwind." Finally, against her better judgment, she relented and began to gather Max's leash, a simple act that felt like a lifeline. Max's energy surged instantly. He couldn't believe it. The thought of exploring the world outside his home revitalized him. As they stepped out, the city greeted them with a chorus of sounds, cars honking, children laughing, and the faint music from a distant street performer. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow that kissed their skin. As they walked along the bustling streets, Max's spirit soared. He pulled at the leash, eager to explore bushes and trees, soaking in the intoxicating sense of the city. So many new adventures awaited him. Each sniff was a story, each gentle tug a declaration of his joy. After several minutes of playful exploration, they passed a small cafe with outdoor seating. People gathered, enjoying their drinks while the sun bathed everything in golden warmth. Max stopped suddenly, his nose twitching as he picked up the scent of something delectable, a hint of sweet pastries wafting through the air. He looked up at Sarah, hopeful. But before he could create a scene, he sensed movement nearby. A large Rottweiler barreled past with its owner in tow. Max's instincts kicked in, and as he reacted, he growled softly, guarding his position protectively in front of Sarah. "Max, it's okay," Sarah said, but her voice trembled slightly as she gripped the leash. The Rottweiler, confident and brash, turned its head, sizing up the smaller dog. "Just ignore him, buddy," Jake added, urging Max to stay calm. It was a familiar play of dominance that many dogs play, challenging one another to establish boundaries. But in that moment, Max felt a surge of confidence. Though his heart raced, he stood firm beside Sarah, unsure yet determined. Each breath he took reminded him how he just wanted to protect his home and his loved ones. It was a natural instinct that instinctively awakens in times of perceived threat. Suddenly, the Rottweiler lunged forward, barking loudly. Max had had enough. With a sudden burst of energy, he yanked the leash from Sarah's grasp and sprang forward, ready to defend his territory. His small size felt irrelevant in that heated moment. Sarah shouted, panic flooding her voice. She reached out, but too late. In a flash, Max and the Rottweiler locked eyes, the tension weighted like an invisible line drawing between them. Jake swiftly stepped between them, his voice steady yet authoritative. "Hey," he called to the Rottweiler's owner, desperately trying to gain control of the situation. As the Rottweiler advanced, Max felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he didn't falter. Instead, he barked back, the sound echoing off the surrounding buildings. It was one of those moments where the human-animal bond transcended fear when instinct gives rise to courage. What happened next was a blur. Rottweiler lunged, and in the chaos of barks and shouts, the world around Max grew silent. Jake's voice cut through the confusion. He stepped forward, grabbing Max's leash to pull him back, but the words were drowned out, lost amid the pandemonium. As if time stood still, the Rottweiler snapped, lunging at Max in a rush of fur and teeth. In a split second, a flash of motion enveloped Max, and he stumbled backward, yelping in surprise. Sarah's heart raced as she rushed forward, her instincts screaming for her to protect her little friend. She shouted, her voice shaking with fear and adrenaline, and then, as if guided by fate, another voice joined the fray. "Stop that!" A woman appeared, her expression fierce and determined. She swiftly grabbed the Rottweiler by the collar, pulling him away and managing to subdue the wild energy pulsating between the two dogs. Max stood frozen, confusion swirling inside him. He glanced up at Sarah and Jake, his heart racing, but the tug of fear receded slowly, as if retreating into the background. The woman asked Sarah, her tone now softened with concern. "My apologies." An unfamiliar warmth bloomed within Sarah, mixed with gratitude and relief. She cried, reaching down to scoop him up into her arms. She pressed her cheek against his golden fur, anchoring herself in the moment. I'm sorry," the woman interrupted, stepping forward, her gaze locked on Max. "It's my fault. I should have had better control." "It's all right," Jake chimed in, his eyes glancing over at the busy park, measuring the rippling tension that still lingered in the air. As the chaos started to dissolve, Sarah held Max close, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat reassuring her. Just then the woman extended an olive branch, her voice genuine. "Can I buy you a drink?" Sarah blinked in surprise, the whirlwind of emotions beginning to settle. It was astounding how quickly fear could unfold, yet there was now a strange kind of connection blossoming in the aftermath. "Sure," she replied, appreciative of the gesture. "Thank you." Two women stood, shaking off the anxiety of the moment, forming a bond stitched together by the realization that even in moments of chaos, understanding and compassion can emerge. Jake watched them, a grin spreading across his face. This might just be the start of a beautiful friendship, he teased lightly, trying to inject some humor into the emotional atmosphere. As they walked toward the cafe, the conversation flowed effortlessly, laughter punctuating their words as they shared tales of their dog's antics. Max, nestled safely in Sarah's arms, sensed the change. The spark of connection brightened his spirit, replacing the shadows of fear. "Every time I take Rex out, he sees another dog and goes wild," the woman admitted, shaking her head. "Honestly, same with Max," Sarah replied, chuckling. A moment of silence filled the air as they both chuckled at the absurdity of it all, basking in the camaraderie that blossomed in the face of chaos. They had transformed a frightening encounter into a shared experience and opportunity to bond over their pets. As they approached the cafe, each woman felt the weight of the morning finally lifting, sunlight pouring down like a warm embrace. They stepped outside, and the air buzzed with warmth, laughter echoing across the square as visitors savored the sunshine. And as Max's little paws touched the ground once more, he felt a ripple of connection extend through him, like the soft whisper of spring brushing against new blooms. He played delightfully beside Rex, the two dogs engaging in their own innocent mock battle of barks and play, entirely consumed by the simple joy of friendship. In the midst of laughter, Sarah glanced down at Max, feeling a swell of love fill her heart. He had navigated a storm, weathered the chaos, and together they found strength in each other. What began as fear morphed into understanding, a revelation that both the dogs and their owners could lean into compassion even when faced with uncertainty. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the park, Sarah turned to the woman and Jake and smiled. A newfound connection united them, a reminder that community can blossom in unexpected moments, bridging the gap between fear and understanding. And as the laughter danced through the air, Max unleashed a joyful bark, perhaps realizing that sometimes, while the world feels chaotic, it can also be filled with warmth, kindness, and a promise of true friendship. Life had turned back toward light, and together they set forth into the twilight, hearts full, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. In a bustling neighborhood coffee shop, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the chatter of patrons bounced off the walls like music. In a corner, a small, scruffy dog named Benny lay patiently by his owner's feet. His eyes were wide with a mix of curiosity and anxiety, keenly aware of every sound and movement around him. Most people caught glimpses of his fluffy face and moved on, not knowing that Benny held a deep story within. Today was different, though. As Benny waited quietly, a young woman named Clara walked in, her face aglow with excitement about her new job. She exuded confidence as she ordered a caramel latte, unaware that her presence was about to unravel an unexpected turn of events. Benny, sensing this shift, perked up slightly. He was a rescue dog, and his past had left him skittish around strangers. Clara took a seat not far from him, and he couldn't help but glance at her. She seemed warm and approachable. Maybe today would bring some new adventures. Just then, a tall man entered the shop, a commanding presence. His demeanor shouted confidence, but Benny sensed a storm brewing beneath the surface. The man strolled straight to Clara, his eyes narrowed. "Hey, I think that's my seat," he said, pointing at the chair opposite her. Clara looked up, surprised. "Oh, I didn't realize." Her voice maintained a calm that Benny admired, but he could feel her growing discomfort. She glanced around, torn between the awkwardness of the situation and a desire not to escalate matters. The man's expression shifted, irritation written clear across his face. Benny's heart began to race, his instincts kicked in. He wanted to protect Clara, but in that moment, being small and frail felt like a limitation. Instead, he crept a bit closer to her side, his gaze fixed on the man, hoping to somehow convey a sense of solidarity. "Look, I really didn't mean to," Clara replied, her voice now trembling slightly. "It's a busy morning and all the tables are taken. I just thought." The man scoffed, crossing his arms. Benny sensed the rising tension. Dogs often pick up on human emotions. They can sense fear and uncertainty lingering in the air. The room felt thick with unspoken words and judgment. Clara's discomfort was palpable, and Benny's heart thumped loudly in his chest. Just as the conflict appeared to escalate, the barista intervened. She asked, her voice firm yet friendly. The tension crackled in the air like electricity. The man turned to the barista, annoyance swirling in his eyes. "This lady stole my seat," he said, pointing dramatically. Clara blinked, almost stunned, struggling to understand how the situation had spiraled so quickly. Benny felt a flash of bravery. Even as a small dog, something about Clara touched him deeply. She didn't deserve this kind of confrontation, not with anyone, let alone a stranger. Gathering every ounce of courage, Benny barked a sharp, unexpected sound that cut through the haze of tension. The unexpected sound startled everyone, and for a moment both Clara and the man turned to Benny. Clara asked, her eyes widening, a ghost of a smile edging on her lips despite the predicament. Benny took a step forward, ears perked, ready to defend his friend. He might be small, but he wouldn't let fear hold him back. The barista chuckled softly, recognizing the moment. The tall man glared down at Benny. "What's this?" His tone dripped with sarcasm, but the barista stood firm by Clara's side. "It's just a misunderstanding." Clara gathered her thoughts, heart racing. "I'm really sorry, I didn't think it'd be a big deal," she said, trying to remain composed. The man stepped forward, looking more menacing than ever. "You should have known better," he growled, as if emphasizing how wrong she was. Benny sensed the aggression in the man's voice, the threat that came from his towering presence. Everything within him screamed for Clara to be safe. He couldn't just let this slide. Striding forward, Benny barked again, a courageous yip that surprised even himself. Clara exclaimed softly, a flicker of admiration lighting her eyes. That little bark gave her strength, an unspoken reminder that sometimes even the smallest creatures can make a big difference. She reached down to stroke Benny, offering him comfort and support. The barista stepped in again, her voice calm and assertive. "We can sort this out without escalating it." The man's brow furrowed. He snapped, but the barista wouldn't allow him to commandeer the conversation. "Let's keep it cool." As Clara stood up, the tall man seemed to retreat slightly, the edge of his aggression dulling under the watchful eyes of those around. Clara took a deep breath, feeling Benny's warmth at her side. "Thank you," she murmured to the barista, feeling an unexpected gratitude wash over her. Benny wagged his tail, sensing her relief. With one last glance at the man, who now appeared outnumbered and irritated, Clara followed the barista to a nearby table, where sunshine streamed through the windows. But the tall man wasn't finished yet. He began, finally honing his aggression like a weapon, yet before he could finish, the barista raised a hand. Enough. In that moment, everything felt like a wild storm, heavy, chaotic, and tumultuous. But as Clara sat down with Benny snuggled beside her, a few regulars in the cafe began to murmur in solidarity. The atmosphere shifted, support grew in the air like a warm embrace cushioning the shock of the encounter. Benny, sensing the tenderness enveloping Clara, felt a swell of pride. Perhaps he couldn't speak, but his heart was loud and clear. He was here to protect her no matter what. The barista asked Clara after they settled. Clara smiled, gratefulness flooding her veins. Benny rested his head on Clara's knee, soaking in the affection radiating from her. Her presence washed over him, erasing the stress of the confrontation. Ultimately, the tall man's presence fell away as strangers began to share their own experiences, tales of troublesome encounters and moments where they felt helpless. Clara listened, feeling the weight of belonging settle comfortably on her shoulders. It was here she truly understood a simple truth. Sometimes, the greatest support doesn't come from standing alone, but from standing together. With each sip of her water and gentle caress she gave Benny, the moment transformed into something undeniably healing. The buzzing cafe gradually replaced the tension with an atmosphere of camaraderie, fostering friendships among strangers. Benny watched the interactions between Clara and the other patrons, feeling the warmth and kindness threading through them all. Life was unpredictable, and moments could pivot from frightening to freeing in the blink of an eye. As Clara chatted and laughed with her new friends, she glanced down at Benny, who gazed back at her with unconditional love. "You're my little hero," she said softly, bending down to nuzzle him. The tiny dog glowed with pride, wagging his tail vigorously. In that very moment, the barista poked her head back into their conversation. Clara chuckled, her laughter mingling with the chatter in the cafe. Dogs have that gift, the barista replied, warm sincerity in her voice. Clara nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. Life wasn't meant to be faced alone, Clara added thoughtfully, and those around her nodded, their expressions mirroring the solidarity that had taken root. As the hour rolled on, a sense of community formed around Clara and Benny, transforming the chaos into comfort. They shared stories of their pets, each tale a thread weaving them closer together. There was laughter, gentle nudges, and understanding, all born from a singular moment that could have spiraled into conflict, yet unfurled into connections. Benny felt the energy in the air shift again, but this time it was serene and calming. He curled up by Clara's side, his little heart a beacon of hope. It was in these moments of care that he realized how powerful love could be, both for his owner and the supportive strangers who had become friends. Eventually, Clara glanced at her phone, realizing time had slipped by. The camaraderie had evolved into something enchanting, leaving her spirit high. I should probably get going soon, she sighed reluctantly. Among the newfound friends, there were assurances that they would meet again, bonds forged in the fire of the day's chaotic energy. The barista even invited Clara to another gathering for dog lovers next week. As the conversations flowed, Benny leaned into Clara one last time, soaking up the warmth of belonging that wrapped around them like a soft blanket. As they made their way toward the exit, Clara turned to the barista and their friends, a smile breaking across her face. The barista smiled back, her eyes twinkling. You'll always have a place here, and thanks to that little hero of yours, she added, nodding toward Benny. Outside, the sun shone brightly as Clara and Benny walked down the street, the bustling energy of the city enveloping them. Each step felt lighter, a reflection of how strength can come from the most unexpected places. Clara mused, and Benny barked softly in agreement, full of life and joy. Their bond had grown stronger through the chaos of that day, igniting a spark that reminded them both of the importance of courage, empathy, and connection. As they headed home, Clara felt grateful for the unlikely support that had emerged in the midst of turmoil. Benny padded alongside her, a proud little sidekick, ready for whatever came next. The world was vast, filled with unpredictable moments, but together they felt unstoppable. In each other's presence, they found the courage to navigate every twist and turn, every joyful and frightening moment life threw their way. As they approached their front door, Clara glanced down at Benny, his tail wagging tirelessly. You really are my hero, she said, bending down to give him a gentle scratch behind the ears. He looked up at her with eyes filled with love and understanding. In that simple exchange, the day's adventure came full circle. It wasn't just about the confrontation in a coffee shop or the strange man who had challenged them. It was about the power of love, the strength of community, and the courage to stand tall. And with every wag of Benny's tail, Clara knew they were ready to face the world together, one paw, one heartbeat at a time. In the end, it wasn't just about finding a seat in a crowded cafe. It was about the bonds we forge and the connections that give life its true meaning. In the heart of a crowded dog park, amidst the laughter of children and the chatter of owners, a small beagle named Rufus stood alone. His floppy ears flopped as he scanned the area, his big brown eyes filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. Today, standing quietly at the edge of the fray, he was waiting for something, or rather someone, to change everything. Across the park, a woman named Emily was tossing a frisbee for her playful golden retriever, Bailey. He leapt into the air, his coat glistening in the sunlight. Laughter erupted as Bailey caught the frisbee, landing perfectly. The joy in the air was palpable, but Rufus felt a knot in his stomach. While everyone else seemed swept away in the moment, he was too often the last pick in a game he desperately wanted to join. Rufus had been adopted from a shelter just months earlier. With a past shrouded in uncertainty, he still found it hard to trust. He wanted to leap into play, to race with the other dogs, but old fears held him back. He glanced again at Emily and Bailey, wishing for the courage to run toward them. And then it happened, the moment that would set everything into motion. A large German shepherd, muscles rippling under his shiny coat, bounded into the park with an air of confidence. His owner, a man named Mark, followed closely behind, his strides full of purpose. The moment the shepherd spotted Bailey, his eyes lit up. Mark called out, throwing a tennis ball with a strong arm. Titan dashed forward, barking with pure excitement, sending a shockwave of energy through the park. Rufus felt a familiar pang of anxiety grip his heart. He could picture how quickly things could go wrong. Bailey, excited to see a new playmate, wagged his tail and approached Titan, but Titan had different plans. The German shepherd lunged, appearing overly eager, and in a split second, the mood shifted. Bailey jumped back, uncertainty flickering across his face as Titan's powerful jaws clamped down on the frisbee. Mark shouted, noticing his dog's aggressive enthusiasm. That's not how we play. His voice was commanding, filled with frustration, but something within Titan didn't register the urgency. He dropped the frisbee, turning his attention to Bailey, who began to retreat. Fearful energy crackled into the air. Rufus, still watching from a distance, felt his heart race, paralyzed by the unfolding drama. What if he was next? In that moment, Bailey took one step back too many. Titan lunged forward with a deep bark. The tension hung thick, a storm cloud ready to burst. Rufus's instincts kicked in, and suddenly he found himself moving forward, barking in alarm despite the fear gripping him. He barked, surprising even himself. That single sound broke through the chaos, piercing the confusion. Mark turned, eyes wide, initially shocked by the sudden interjection from the smaller dog. Titan, uncertain by the unexpected challenge, paused. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Emily, who had been watching the whole scene unravel, quickly sprang into action. She shouted, her voice firm. "Stop it!" Mark hesitated, realizing the mistake he had made. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, trying to regain control. Rufus, bolstered by the attention, growled softly in defiance, his little heart pounding. The chaos began to subside as Emily reached for Bailey, wrapping him up in a tight embrace. "You're okay," she whispered, offering soothing words. Mark rushed over, acquiring a protective stance next to Titan. "I really didn't mean for him to scare anyone," he said again, the weight of the situation hanging heavily in the air. "No one was hurt," Emily replied, keeping her voice steady, "but you have to watch him closely." Rufus noticed the tension, the uncertainty brimming like a bubble ready to burst. He felt a flicker of empowerment from barking just moments before, but how quickly that pulse of energy faded. He had always been the quieter dog, the one that waited in the shadows. Emily called softly. For a moment, Rufus hesitated. Did he dare to approach? But it didn't take long before he felt the pull of affection. The warmth in Emily's voice was a lifeline. He trotted towards her, tail wagging tentatively, appreciative of the security she exuded. Watching from a distance, Mark felt the sting of guilt ripple through him. "I'm really sorry about Titan," he said, kneeling down to gain Titan's attention. "It's all right," Emily said, her tone softening. But Rufus was still wrestling with the uncertainty. Did he really belong? Did he have a place in this vibrant world? Dogs often express their fears through their bodies. Rufus's posture displayed nothing short of uncertainty. As chaos and conversations around them began to settle, Emily finally turned her attention back to Rufus. "You brave boy," she said, kneeling to scratch behind his ears. That simple acknowledgement cracked through Rufus's walls. Maybe he was more than just a quiet observer. He lifted his head higher, the spark igniting within him. Perhaps today could be different. As the group resumed their playful talks, the tension began to thaw. Mark and Emily discussed how Titan could use some training, elaborating on the unpredictability of large dogs. Rufus, feeling emboldened, started to wriggle closer to Titan, sensing the large dog's anxious energy. Clara laughed, her amusement a light breeze in the previously heavy air. Rufus, bolstered by the warmth and camaraderie, approached Titan. The shepherd, still slightly uncertain, looked down at the small newcomer, curiosity bubbling in his eyes. "Hey there, little guy," he said softly, his voice surprisingly gentle now. That unexpected tone thawed Rufus's defenses. "Hey, I didn't mean to bark at you," he replied, his voice playful, unsure yet hoping. Titan's tail wagged slowly. "I appreciate that. I can be a bit much sometimes." Rufus nodded, beginning to understand the complexities of dog friendships. We all have our moments. The two dogs exchanged playful glances, a connection forming between them. The kind of understanding that transcended words, an invisible bond forged through mutual fears and aspirations. A feeling of warmth radiated within the group. Emily and Mark shared an understanding of the importance of communication, a connection that had once been clouded by misunderstanding. They stood side by side, laughter bridging their differences. "Maybe we can all work together," Mark suggested. "I'd love that," Emily replied, "and maybe Rufus can show him how to be a little less." The laughter rippled through the air, weaving their hearts together in a tapestry of shared experiences. In that moment, everything felt right, the worry of earlier hanging like a distant memory. Rufus, now feeling more like a part of the community, began to bounce on his toes, wiggling with excitement. He gently nudged Titan, signaling it was time to play. Rufus proposed, energy surging. Titan nodded, enthusiasm sparking in his eyes. "I'm in." As they bounded off together, Emily and Mark stood back, watching with delight. They exchanged glances, realizing how quickly the situation had shifted. Rufus, who had once stood anxiously on the sidelines, was now leading the charge. Mark exclaimed, his face lit up with amusement. The laughter continued to roll through the park, echoing around them like a beautiful symphony. Rufus and Titan dashed around, the larger dog learning to temper his strength, while the smaller dog revealed just how courageous he truly was. In that frenetic joy, they discovered a shared rhythm, a dance of newfound friendship blossoming under the sun. As the afternoon unfolded, a feeling of unity wrapped around everyone. They shared their own stories, exchanged numbers for future playdates, and began planning future outings. The fear that had once haunted Rufus melted away under the warmth of acceptance. Eventually, Clara called Rufus over. He trotted back, tired yet filled with joy, stopping to sit at her side. "You did great, buddy," she said, beaming with pride. Rufus replied, his small body bouncing slightly. "You showed everyone that it's okay to stand up for each other," she said lovingly. As they prepared to leave the park, Emily turned to Mark, a smile spreading across her face. "Thank you for today." Absolutely, he replied, feeling a bond forming in the warmth of the sun. And as they shared goodbye hugs, Rufus felt a surge of happiness deep within his heart. He might have been small, but he had found his place, his voice, and a family wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. As they left, Rufus couldn't help but glance back at the park, now transformed into a cherished memory. He learned that sometimes, it only takes a moment of courage to unlock beautiful connections, and that every dog, no matter how small, has the power to change the world in their way. Beneath the shimmering sun and the laughter that lingered in the air, Rufus walked forward, tail wagging with newfound confidence. Everything felt possible, and every step was an invitation into a brighter world built on trust, compassion, and love. Today wasn't just another day, it was the day courage found its voice, and together they were ready for whatever adventure came next. In the lively hustle of a Saturday morning market, where the sun bathed everything in golden light and laughter filled the air, a small dog named Benny sat quietly at the edge of a bustling fruit stand. His coat was a soft shade of caramel, his eyes big and hopeful, but underneath that playful exterior lay a heart that had seen its fair share of struggles. Benny's owner, an elderly woman named Margaret, had brought him along for a much-anticipated outing. A retired schoolteacher, she adored Benny with every fiber of her being, but today was different. While she chatted with a vendor about the best way to pick ripe peaches, Benny felt an unease creeping in. As he watched people drift by, Benny felt invisible. Children rushed past him, giggling as they leaped at balloons, and the air was filled with the sweet aroma of baked goods. But amidst the joy, he felt that familiar knot in his stomach, a feeling that had come from being abandoned once before. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted nearby. Benny's ears perked up as he turned to see a large dog, a massive Rottweiler, straining against its leash. The owner, a young man with a heavy brow, seemed to be struggling for control. The man shouted, his voice edged with frustration, but Duke was not in the mood to listen. His growls resonated through the air, a soundtrack of tension that sent Benny's heart racing. The beagle instinctively backed away, pressed against the crates of apples, his tiny frame almost lost among the fruit. Benny's past had taught him to be cautious. A loud noise and aggressive growl, those were triggers that would send tremors through his body, reminding him of a time he would rather forget. But today he was determined to be brave, for Margaret's sake, for both of their sakes. The commotion escalated when Duke suddenly lunged toward a nearby child holding a cookie. The child squealed in surprise, and in that split second, fear rippled through the crowd. Benny's protective instinct kicked in despite his size. "Hey," Margaret shouted, stepping forward. She had seen the panic rise and felt the need to intervene, but before she could reach Benny, the young man had tightened his grip on Duke's leash. "I'm sorry," the owner called out, but his tone held a hint of irritation, as if it was everyone else's fault. The young child's parent rushed in, trying to comfort both the child and the commotion that had erupted. Meanwhile, Benny felt his heart pounding. He had seen aggression before, and though he wanted to protect those around him, he was scared. He instinctively looked up at Margaret, who knelt beside him, her calming presence anchoring him. "Stay close, my boy," she whispered, reassuring him. Duke thrashed against the nervous energy swarming around, his growls insistent and fierce. The young man struggled, still trying to tame the powerful dog that seemed to lose all sense of control. The crowd began to gossip, voices rising, conversations merging into a tornado of worry. "Someone should say something," a woman nearby murmured, her eyes wide with disbelief. Benny, feeling the sweeping tide of chaos, took a deep breath and glanced back at the Rottweiler. He wasn't alone in his terror. Duke, too, was trapped in a state of distress, a creature caught between instinct and environment. Just then, Duke broke free, lunging for the cookie once again. But this time, the young man's quick reflexes snagged the leash before disaster struck. He shouted, but the dog seemed lost in a whirlwind of excitement. Benny stepped forward, nudging closer to the scene, heart pounding but feeling an urge to defuse the situation. He barked, the words surprisingly clear. The young man turned in shock. He blurted, astonished by the little dog's audacity. "I said we need to calm down," Benny replied, feeling a surge of bravery. The crowd around them paused, stunned into silence. The power of the moment hung like a fragile thread in the air. People began to murmur, and those who were worried started to laugh softly, finding humor in the unexpected interruption. Someone joked, breaking the tension. Laughter rippled through the crowd, approaching the absurdity of the situation. Benny realized his opportunity. "Yes, I'm talking. Will you listen?" With the crowd easing into laughter, even Duke's growls softened, curiosity overtaking aggression. The young man looked bewildered but slowly took a step back, allowing Duke to gather himself. Margaret, still kneeling by Benny's side, couldn't believe it. "You brave little one," she whispered, pride swelling in her chest. In that moment, Benny became more than just a frightened dog. He was a warrior standing up for peace amidst adversity. The young man finally relaxed his grip, catching Duke's glance. He said, slowly bending down to stroke Duke's fur. Duke's tense muscles eased, and the crowd watched as the once wild energy began to transform. Benny took a deep breath, the toll of the moment lifting slightly. "See," We just needed to breathe, to think. It's not about being big or scary, it's about connection, he said, his heart racing with newfound courage. The crowd began to applaud and laughter replaced the tension. Someone shouted and Benny felt a rush of warmth flood through him. Finally, the young man addressed Margaret and Benny directly. "I'm really sorry," his tone softened as he knelt down. Margaret smiled, placing a hand on Benny's head. "It's okay, we all have our moments. I guess sometimes it takes a little bark to remind us," the young man responded, grinning widely. The crowd responded with laughter. "Yes," Benny chimed in, lifting his head proudly. The combination of laughter and applause washed over him, instilling the confidence he had long sought. Moments later, the crowd dispersed, smiles lingering on their faces. Margaret exclaimed, embracing him tightly. She could feel the warmth of their newfound connection wrapping around her like a soft blanket. Benny replied, basking in the relief that the chaos had finally calmed. With the sun shining overhead, they ventured back into the market, now filled with energy and camaraderie. Benny trotted beside Margaret, his small tail wagging with excitement. She asked playfully, pulling a small bag of dog biscuits from her purse. Benny's eyes lit up. They found a quiet corner near the flower stalls, where Margaret settled down on a bench. "You know, Benny, today you taught everyone a lesson," she said, breaking the biscuit in half and handing it to him. The words struck a chord deep within Benny. He realized that what he had done wasn't just about barking loudly. It was about breaking down barriers. It was about making sure everyone felt safe, even in their most chaotic moments. They spent the rest of the day wandering through the market, met with friendly smiles and nods from those who had witnessed the transformation. Each moment Benny relished, his spirit buoyed by love and connection. Later, as they made their way back to the car, a thought struck Margaret. "You know, Benny, maybe we should talk to Duke's owner again." Benny wagged his tail excitedly. "I'd love that." With each step they took, Benny's heart swelled with hope and pride. They both had faced their fears today. Benny found a voice where there once was silence, and Margaret learned to carry strength within herself. As they arrived home, Benny curled up in his favorite spot near the window, the gentle breeze ruffling his fur. He felt a sense of calm settle in, a quiet fulfillment that washed over him like the golden light of the setting sun. In that moment, Benny understood that bravery doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the soft, quiet moments that lead to the most significant changes. Today he had started a journey, one that began with a fearful bark but blossomed into a chorus of connection, understanding, and warmth. As he dozed off, Benny smiled softly, dreaming of new adventures and the friends he had yet to meet. And in the embrace of love, he knew, no matter where he wandered, he was finally home. In the middle of a sunlit park, laughter rang out, punctuated by shrieks of joy from children playing tag, and the soft rustling of leaves danced in the breeze. In the midst of all this buzz, a small, scruffy dog named Oliver waited patiently on a bench. His tail, a skinny little thing, wagged occasionally, but the little terrier's eyes were glued to a group of children tossing a frisbee back and forth. He had always been shy around people, but today felt different. Oliver's heart raced. He wanted to leap off the bench and join the fun, to be a part of the laughter echoing around him. Then again, his past experiences clung tightly, like shadows lurking at the edge of his mind. He had argued with fear for so long, battling his anxiety with muffled barks and whimpers. Timid by nature, he had often shied away from the lively chaos others seemed to revel in. Across the park, a couple approached, their dog bounding happily ahead of them. It was a hefty golden retriever, full of energy and enthusiasm, clearly ready for action. Oliver's stomach churned at the sight. Would they notice him? Would he be seen? Just then, a little girl squealed as she missed the frisbee, sending it off course and nearly into Oliver's path. In an instant, he concentrated, ready for a split-second decision. He could either retreat or make a bold move. As if fueled by an invisible force, Oliver hopped off the bench and darted forward, eager to interact, eager not to let this moment slip away. But at that very moment, the golden retriever, whose name was Finn, came barreling in like a freight train, oblivious to the little terrier's presence, and collided with him. The impact knocked Oliver off his feet, sending him tumbling onto the grass. He let out a yelp. The suddenness of it all left him dazed, his heart racing, fear flooding back in like a tidal wave. "Finn," the couple shouted in unison, rushing forward to check on their unruly dog and the small creature sprawled on the ground. As they approached, there was a mix of concern and anxiety in the air. Just moments ago, Oliver had felt a wave of courage. Now he felt small and vulnerable under the gaze of the larger dog and its owners. The woman knelt beside him, her voice softening. She asked, cradling Oliver's small body in her hands, her warm eyes filled with concern. Oliver sensed kindness in her touch, but the uncertainty lingered. The world was spinning again, and all he could remember was the pain of fear creeping back in. Would they scold Finn? Would they be mad at him for being in the way? "He just gets too excited sometimes," the man said, running a hand through his hair. "I'm really sorry." Oliver gazed up at the couple, each word penetrating his fog of fear. Maybe he could be brave again. As he took a deep breath, he mustered the strength to let his tail wag slightly. "It's okay, I'm all right," he managed to bark softly, surprising even himself. The couple exchanged glances, astonishment along with amusement flashing through their eyes. The woman half laughed, half asked, her face lighting up with laughter. Before he could respond, Oliver heard the unmistakable sound of laughter nearby, the children giggling at the spectacle. The atmosphere shifted. What had felt like a catastrophe now danced in the air as the other dog, excited and eager, nudged Oliver's side playfully, trying to re-establish a connection. Suddenly, Oliver didn't want to hold back anymore. "You know, I get it," he said, wobbling slightly on shaky legs as he stood back up. There was sincerity in his voice. He could feel the bond between them beginning to form. Before the couple could respond, the little girl rushed over. She asked, her brown eyes opening wide with astonishment. The couple exchanged another look. "Not quite," the woman replied, smiling. The little girl pleaded, her excitement palpable. Finn stood proudly beside Oliver, tail wagging, momentarily forgetting his boisterous personality as he turned to the young girl. "Yes," Oliver declared, feeling a rush of exhilaration. The warmth of acceptance wrapped around him like a protective cloak. As the little girl knelt down, her tiny fingers gently stroked Oliver's back, he reveled in the affection. "Wow," she exclaimed, beaming with joy. In that moment, Oliver felt seen, valued. It was hard to believe that a small interaction could shift his entire outlook. But as the laughter echoed around him, a sudden voice broke through the happiness. "Excuse me." The atmosphere shifted again as a sharp, impatient tone sliced through the ambience. A woman stormed over, her expression fierce, eyes narrow. She wore a stylish jacket and carried herself with an air of authority. Behind her, a stocky bulldog trotted, clearly unimpressed by the commotion. "Duke," the woman shouted, brandishing her finger at the bulldog as if expecting immediate obedience. Oliver felt his heart race again, this time not from fear but from curiosity. He remembered when he had been bowed down by a similar sense of tension in the air. As the chaos of children and laughter faded slightly, the anger in the woman's tone clashed with the energy around them. "What's going on?" she continued, her tone dripping with disdain. The couple exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to respond to this unexpected intrusion. The little girl, still kneeling beside Oliver, looked up at the woman, her eyes widening with concern. "He just got knocked over by Finn," the man replied cautiously, "but he's all right." The woman's gaze lingered over Oliver, scanning him like he was an inconvenience, a blight to her perfect day. She huffed, folding her arms across her chest. Beneath the weight of her words, Oliver felt a surge of anxiety return, the shadows creeping back in, trying to suffocate his newfound confidence. For a moment, he nearly shrank back, the sting of insecurity pricking at his heart. But then, the boyish laughter of the children rang out again, infusing the moment with a touch of light. The little girl defended. Someone else chimed in from the crowd, an older gentleman who had witnessed the scene unfold. The woman huffed, momentarily taken aback by the unexpected support. "Well, maybe people should take better care of their pets," she snapped, her gaze flitting back to Oliver. As Oliver looked up at the woman, he felt a fire ignite inside him, a fierce barrier urging him to speak out. "I may be small, but I deserve to be treated like everyone else," he said, surprising himself with his boldness. The crowd was silent for a moment, stunned by the little dog's bravery. Then the atmosphere shifted once again as people started to murmur in support. "Exactly, we all have our stories," Margaret said, stepping forward now. Her voice rang with a strength that surprised even herself. "And everyone can learn," the little girl added, her eyes glimmering with determination. The woman's demeanor softened slightly, and for a moment Oliver thought he saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes, but then it vanished. "I don't have time for this," she said, waving a dismissive hand. As the woman turned to leave, the bulldog looked back at Oliver, who stood his ground. "You're a good dog," the bulldog murmured quietly, surprisingly supportive. And just like that, Oliver felt a shift, a sense of empowerment coiling within him like a tightly wound spring. Though he had faced hostility, he had also discovered solidarity in unexpected places, distillations of acceptance stitched into the fabric of the moment. Just then, Margaret leaned down beside Oliver. She whispered, her tone encouraging, "You stood up for yourself." Emboldened, Oliver turned to the crowd, an air of confidence washing over him. "I'm not here to cause problems, I'm here to play, I want friends." Suddenly, the park sounded different. Laughter, barks, and cheers filled the space, a tapestry of voices woven together into a vibrant tapestry against the fading light of day. The world felt alive, and for the first time in a long while, Oliver felt like he could truly be a part of it. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Oliver realized that perhaps the journey home would not only be a return to safety, but into a world filled with warmth and friendship. But just as he turned to face returning laughter, a sudden growl erupted from the other side of the park, a sharp, menacing sound that sliced through the camaraderie like a knife. All eyes shifted, tension rising again as everyone turned to see what was unfolding. The confrontation had not yet ended. The man who owned Duke was standing at the entrance of the park, a look of anger etched on his face. He demanded, eyeing the crowd with defiance. With an eerie hush falling over the park, Oliver stood frozen, his confidence now hanging by a thread. The shadows of doubt rushed back in, the fear that had once gripped him returning with a vengeance. Whatever might happen next felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. Would he have to confront this new threat? Would he find strength among friends, or would this situation spiral into chaos again? A single thought echoed in Oliver's mind. He had already found his voice today, but now he would have to face the ultimate test. As the sun dipped lower, time seemed to hang in the air, moments suspended in uncertainty, and all Oliver could do was wait quietly, knowing that the next breath could change everything.